Today's tutorial will teach you how to do Judy's Magic Cast On. And who doesn't love magic, especially when it's knitting magic? This technique was developed by Judy Becker and is an absolutely brilliant cast on. And it's used a lot in toe-up socks, and also there are many other applications that can be used. I'm going to be making a top-down hat, and this is a perfect technique to use for that as well. I'll be demonstrating today using a 32-inch circular cable needle. You can do this also on double-pointed needles. You'll see behind that I have a length of yarn, and the tail is facing forward, so I'm just going to pick up this looped end, and I'm going to slide it over the top needle. When I begin here, I want both needle tips pointing to the left. Now I'm going to set my hands up as if to do a long tail cast on. And now my tail end is over my index finger and my live end is over my thumb. The first loop on this top needle actually counts as the first stitch. So now we're going to put a stitch on the bottom needle. And we're going to continue that chronology. We're going to put a stitch on the top and then a stitch on the bottom and so on. So now, in order to get one on the top, we're going to move our needle tips up toward the ceiling. The bottom needle is going to come behind the strand on my index finger and go in between the two needles and then wrap around the bottom needle. Now I have 2 stitches. Now let's put another stitch on the top needle. To do that, and you'll notice I'm pinching with my thumb and forefinger these little strands because they're just strands wound around and they're not really stable, so I'm just going to hold on to them. I'm going to bring the 2 needles down till they run just parallel with this strand. I'm going to split in between and then bring my needles up, and it wraps around the top needle. Now my needle tips are up. The bottom needle comes behind the strand on my index finger and in between and wraps around the bottom. And let's talk a little bit about the concept of what we're doing here. When I want to put a stitch on the top needle, my needle tips need to move downward. When I want to put a stitch on the bottom needle, my needle tips will move upwards. So it's actually an inverse motion to put each stitch on the opposing needle. So now we're ready to put another stitch on the top needle, so my needles will come down till they're just parallel, split the difference, bring the tips up, and we wrap around the top. Let's do one around on the bottom. Bottom needle comes behind, in between, and wraps around the bottom. Let's do another set. Down, split the difference, and up. Bottom comes behind and in between. Let's do one more. Down, in between, and up, behind, between. Okay. Now, at this point, some people like to tie these little ends together just to make them feel secure. I don't, because I'm lazy. And I just pinch with my finger and I rotate these needles around so that the tips are pointing right. Now, I'm going to continue as with a magic loop. And if any of you are familiar with magic loop, this is the one, when I was learning this technique, this seemed a little counterintuitive to me. Typically, I would be, for magic loop, you'd be pulling out on the top needle, but you want to actually work the stitches on the top needle first. So we're going to pull out the bottom needle. And it's just for this first half round that this happens. Now, I'm going to go into this first stitch on the top needle, and I need to wrangle my yarns just a little bit here. Here's my tail end. That needs to be hanging over the top. And then my live end is right here, as you see. So I'm going to go into this stitch and bring the yarn around, go into my next stitch, and then I'm just going to tighten up this loose tail end. And it's all good. And so then I'm just going to knit across the rest of these stitches. Now I've gotten to the end, so I'm going to rotate my tips back to the right. I'm going to push this dangling needle tip back. Then we're just like regular magic loop cast on. I'm going to pick up this needle as my working needle, and now I'm going to work into the other side's set of stitches here and just work across. to the end here. And let me just rotate again so that we'll be set up for the next side. And at this point we'll be able to open these stitches out and just take a look at that cast on. And it's absolutely beautiful. It really is a brilliant cast on. So many thanks to Judy Becker for her genius, and I hope that this tutorial has helped you learn a new technique. Enjoy!